Hey, welcome back, everyone. So here on the road again, actually back in Texas right now. And folks, a few big stories to go into. We're going to talk about some of the big shakeups right now happening in the Republican Party and in the Democrat Party. Basically, you have a lot of Republicans now pushing out a lot of the anti-Trump crowd. And there are some people pushing back on that as well. At the same time, and so basically, they're aligning their party basically ideologically going into 2022. And the current direction of this is that the Republican Party is really becoming the MAGA party, not just from the top level like it was under Trump, but from the grassroots bottom-up level now. You're seeing a transformation within the party. We'll be going into this. Also, in the Democrat side, there's a lot of stuff happening. They're talking about redistricting, which Republicans are technically in charge of right now. Redistricting, which could actually change the way that the way that votes are cast in terms of the local area, which could actually change a lot of political seats. Also, you have a lot of Democrats going to retire, and so they're actually warning on their side that given the current situation with this, not to mention everything else, they're concerned they're going to lose House majority at least in 2022, which, of course, retaking the House and Senate for the Republicans is the main focus of Trump right now. Now, folks, go to these stories, go into a few other stories. And that said, folks, good to see you all here. Yeah, on my farm, good seeing you. Dave Johnson, hello as well. Julie next, how you doing? Beth Weaver, Mama's proud. Yeah, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there also. Linda, you said hello from Missouri. Mark Schaefer, yeah, good to see y'all here. Mark, hello from Kentucky. Thank you. Yeah, folks, wonderful as always seeing y'all. A lot of stories to go into. As always, if you have questions, leave them in the chat. We'll try to get to around the halfway mark. So, folks, let's jump into the first story for the night. Now, Epoch Times reports, we'll go over a few stories, what's happening with Republicans. And then we'll jump into that and show kind of the bigger picture with it. But first off, let's start with Epoch Times reporting. It says Senator Mitt Romney censured by Utah County Republican Party. Basically, what's happening is that any Republican who had voted to impeach Trump when the Democrats are pushing for his impeachment during his last days in office, and actually after he was removed from office, after he left office, anybody on the Republican side who voted to impeach Trump is now being censured, or at least facing a lot of criticism within the party. It says here, Senator Mitt Romney was censured over the weekend by the Weber County, Utah Republican Party for voting to convict former President Donald Trump in the Senate's second impeachment trial of him earlier this year. The resolution to censure Romney, a former presidential candidate, was passed 116 to 97 by members of the Weber County GOP. The county park secretary, Jill Kofold, told the Salt Lake Tribune. And she said this is according to the resolution from the GOP. It says here, the Weber County Republican Convention censures Mitt Romney for his votes to convict President Trump in 2 U.S. impeachment trials which denied the president due process, allowed falsified evidence, did not provide adequate time for an investigation, and did not follow the U.S. Constitution, which states a president may only be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors. In other words, folks, it was a political impeachment that bypassed all the normal protocols you would have to go through for something like that, because they wanted to rush it through, it seems, when Trump was, of course, leaving office. Really a very politicized move that skipped a lot of the steps that would normally happen within a process like that. Meaning, again, it was deeply politicized to the extent that, again, even the Supreme Court Justice Roberts, would not actually oversee it as he would normally be required to because of the things that were happening that actually made it really unconstitutional. You cannot impeach a former president, which is what they tried to do. Now, a little more on that, and then actually something a bit bigger going on with the Republicans. Let's talk about one more part of this first. It says here, another story. Ohio Republican Party censures and calls for the resignation of Representative Anthony Gonzalez. It says here now, in Ohio, the Republican Party censured and called for the resignation of Representative Anthony Gonzalez for his vote to impeach former President Donald Trump earlier this year. On Friday, the state's GOP's governing board called on Gonzalez to resign after a divided vote. They also voted to censure him, and 9 other Republicans who impeached Trump, 9 others who voted to impeach Trump, lent their votes to support the unconstitutional, politically motivated impeachment process proceeding against him, according to the resolution. And it says Gonzalez, quote, resorted to emotional conclusions that misplaced blame on President Trump, the president of law and order and America first. And it says here, we believe that Congressman Gonzalez knowingly and willfully violated his oath of office. Now, a couple big points on this. Any of the never Trumpers who were still on the Republican side, and there were a few of them, of course. Even if you go back to some of the Reagan-era Republicans, some of them didn't like Trump because they were used to the more diplomatic, more presidential kind of character. And so you did have never Trumpers who were more Reagan-era guys. A lot of them are being pushed out right now. A lot of the never Trumper Republicans, the ones who did not get behind the Make America Great Again agenda, are being pushed out of the party. And this is important because right now within the Republican Party, you have basically 2 dueling factions. 2 dueling factions that are going to determine what the policies of the entire party are going forward. And essentially, this is the MAGA party, the Republican Trump party, right? Under Trump, essentially. And there's the establishment Republican Party, the Bush era, type Republicans, the old school Republicans, the ones that were there before Trump. Now, a lot of those folks are being pushed out. And at the same time, Trump has his Make America Great Again agenda that he's pushing through the grassroots. He has his own political action committee. And he's using that to both fundraise for candidates and to, again, get behind candidates to endorse them for their campaigns, meaning that Trump is going to be leading the party. The Republican Party, with these changes, is really going to be, I think, the new, it's going to become the Trump party. The Republican Party is becoming the Trump party, basically. And an important part on that here, we talked about how people officials who voted to impeach Trump are being censured or asked to step down. Something very big here. This is probably the biggest of these parts, actually. Epoch Times reports. Next one, actually. We'll go into one more part first, then we'll go into the big one. It says here, Lindsey Graham is saying Republicans cannot move forward without President Trump. And Senator Lindsey Graham on Thursday suggested that GOP, right, is still the party of former President Donald Trump. They're saying the Republican Party is the party of Trump. It comes as White House Republicans are moving to remove number 3 Republican Representative Liz Cheney. They're trying to remove Liz Cheney right now. Again, the number 3 ranking Republican, after her critical comments about the former president. And Graham told this to Fox News. He said, quote, I would just say to my Republican colleagues, can we move forward without President Trump? The answer is no. He said, I've always liked Liz Cheney, but she made a determination that the Republican Party can't grow with President Trump. I've determined we can't grow without him. And so this shakeup right now, this shakeup you're seeing within the Republican Party is basically on this ground, right? It's officials realizing that if they have never Trumpers within their party, most of the voting base is going to view those never Trumpers as basically Democrats. And they're not going to vote for them. At the very least, they're not going to maybe vote at all. If they don't believe, again, that the Republicans they're voting for are actually on the agenda that they want to support, which on the Republican side is becoming majority-wise the Make America Great Again agenda. Now, on that note of Liz Cheney, this is the big one. Epoch Times reports, Jordan says votes are there to oust Cheney from the Republican leadership. The votes are in, maybe this week. They're going to try to, and they have the votes to do it. They're going to try to oust Liz Cheney from her leadership position within the Republican Party. Now, this is last Thursday they reported this, but it's going to move forward this week. They said, quote, this Epoch Times said, there are enough votes to remove Representative Liz Cheney, representative from Wyoming, from her position as House GOP conference chair, according to a top Republican member. Cheney, the number 3 GOP member in the lower chamber, due to her position, is facing pressure because of her continued attacks on former President Donald Trump. If they attack Trump at this point within the Republican Party, they're going to be pushed out. That's what we're seeing, right? Whether it's being censured, whether it's being asked to step down, whether it's votes like this to oust them. If the Republicans oppose Trump and his agenda at this time, there's moves being taken to push them out of the party. That's what's happening. Let's go into it. Now, Representative Jim Jordan, ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, summarized the problem during a Wednesday appearance on Fox News. And he said this: "You can't have a Republican conference chair reciting Democrat talking points," which really for a lot of Republicans is how that would be interpreted, right? And he continues, "You can't have a Republican conference chair taking a position that 90% of the party disagrees with. And you can't have a Republican Party chair consistently speaking out against the individual who 74 million Americans voted for." He said the caucus, right now this is this week going to be happening. The caucus will likely gather next week. This was last week, and so that means this week. They will likely gather this week and oust Cheney. Very likely this week they're going to oust Liz Cheney. They have the votes for it. They say they already have the votes for it. Now, Jordan said, quote, "I think that for sure the votes are there, and I think it will happen most likely next Wednesday," which means this Wednesday, in a couple days, folks. So this is the big shakeup happening within the Republican Party right now. Again, an ideological shakeup. Anyone who voted to impeach Trump, anybody who's against the Make America Great Again agenda, anybody who publicly criticizes Trump, within the party itself, not from Trump, but from within the party itself, they are pushing those individuals out. And why is that? It's because they're going off the sounding board of the American people, right? They're going off the sounding board of their voters, the Republican Party voters. And again, the Republican Party voters are very heavily in favor of Trump. And those who oppose him are being viewed as more the Democrat. Because remember, folks, there was even a shakeup on the Democrat side. You have the new kind of grassroots. You have this socialist grassroots that's taken over. You have the squad, right? They had their own shakeup in the Democrats with this as well. Anybody who's not singing the song of socialism essentially is going to face a lot of pressure there as well. And you have a lot of shakeups taking place within their own party. They have to march with this whole, step-by-step agenda. Nobody votes against it, or they're going to be attacked as well. Now, on that note, there's a big shift taking place within the Democrat Party as well. And basically, they're warning right now. They believe that they may lose control of the House. Let's go over it. The Epoch Times reports this: former Democrat campaign chairs warn about Pelosi losing House majority in 2022. They believe that they stand a very strong risk, they assess, that they're going to lose control of the House of Representatives in 2022, which means their supermajority ends. And if the Republicans take back not just the House, but also the Senate, really this kind of blows a big hole within the Biden agenda they're pushing forward right now. Let's go into this. Now, this is last Thursday as well, but important within this broader context. It says here, several former Democratic campaign chairs have expressed concern over the possibility of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat from California, losing the House majority in 2022. Folks, that is not far away. It's 2020, it's 2021 right now, already pretty far into it. 2022 is just around the corner. And it says here, former Representative Steve Israel, who led the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in 2012 and 2014, Obama years, told New York Times that, quote, the two biggest headaches of any cycle of redistricting and retirement, are redistricting and retirement, right? These are the two biggest things that they see basically changing the party, aside from the sounding board of the American voter, right? Aside from voters themselves, redistricting and retirement. These are the two big things they're facing. And when you have both in one cycle, he said, it is a migraine. In other words, There's redistricting taking place right now. And guess which party is leading most of that effort? The redistricting, the Republican Party. What does this mean? It means that representatives in the House, of course, House of Representatives, representing different U.S. districts, the voting base of their district is changing because they can change the borders on it. Meaning that, for example, they can change the district so that, let's say, a close race where Democrats usually win can be redistricted to include a more Republican area, which will bring in more red votes and very likely flip that vote. They can do this. And again, Republicans being in charge mostly of the redistricting right now, Democrats are viewing that as a big threat to them possibly losing, again, House control. At the same time, they have retirements taking place. And let me go into that in just a bit. Israel said that after the new districts are created and made official, candidates have to wait to see what district they will be trying to run in. And he said it's like going to war on a battlefield, but you don't know where you're fighting, when you're fighting, or who you're fighting, he explained. And another former DCC head, this is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, Representative Martin Frost, said that recent retirements among Democratic congressional Democrats are also concerning. So in addition to redistricting, they have people in the party who are retiring. And what does that mean? It means that they have to place new candidates, which means they have to have strong enough characters to go in and basically win over the vote. They have to have people come onto the stage and become well-known enough among the local voters within redistricting sometimes, meaning they don't even know how to frame the narratives according to the place they're going to be running in, right? These are working kind of hand in hand, focused on this, right? Hand in hand, working together, not just placing new candidates, not just having to win over new voters with those candidates, but also going into areas where they don't actually know where they're going to be or who the voters will be, meaning that they have to find a way to do that. And you might remember a recent episode I did, we talked about another Democrat leader who was also warning that Democrats risk losing at least the House in 2022. And the reason they gave at the time for possibly losing the House in 2022 was because in some of these recent votes that have happened in the U.S., Texas in particular, one of the seats, again, where a Democrat wasn't even placed among the top candidates. They came in third, right? Two Republicans were the two frontliners for the seat in an area where they thought they'd have a lot more Democrat support. They said that was a sounding board, basically saying that the issues they are presenting right now, the narratives of the party, are not getting people to the polls. In other words, the narratives they're presenting, the narratives they're getting their politicians to run behind, to campaign on, to go out and get people to try to vote for, are not getting people to the polls. And so here you have three different factors tying into their concerns that they're going to, at the very least, lose the House. We'll have to see what happens with it. Again, a lot going on right now with that. Now, on another note, I'm sure, folks, you've all seen the stories. Real quick, Zoe S., he said, how do you think the latest on the Arizona audit results so far? I'm going to go into that a bit tonight, and quite a bit. There's a few updates on that, so stick around. We'll go over one more story or two more stories first, go into some questions, then we'll go into Arizona, because there's a lot of updates in Arizona right now. First of all, though, folks, I'm sure you've all seen people saying Epoch Times, and Crossroads is a show of Epoch Times. Epoch Times is far right. Epoch Times is biased and things like this. Well, there's a very interesting study that was just done by All Sides. This is a third-party organization, one that's not partisan. Basically, they did a blind survey where they took articles and headlines of different media. Now, keep in mind, All Sides originally had Epoch Times put as far right, basically because that's what people were saying. They had people complain about them, labeling us as far right. And so they did a blind survey, and guess what? They came out and they said, according to the blind survey, Epoch Times is centrist to lean right, and lean right only because we do tend to interview more Republicans, which is fair criticism. Now, let's go into it because this is actually interesting, folks. Any of you who have friends out there who maybe criticize you for watching this show or for supporting Epoch Times, and they say, oh, that's alt-right, that's far-right, you can now tell them that Epoch Times is centrist, according to a 2,000-person blind survey done by a third-party organization. Let's go into it. Real quick, right? We'll go over this quickly. All Sides reports. In September, we released the findings of our August 2020. Oh, and real quick, too. Not only did they say Epoch Times is centrist, they placed us as less biased than New York Times. Less biased than New York Times. All right, let's go into it. It says here in September, we released the findings of our August 2020 blind bias survey, in which over 2,000 people across the political spectrum rated the media bias of 5 different news outlets blindly. They did not show them which media they were reading, in other words, right? They didn't say this is Epoch Times, this is New York Times, this is Bloomberg. They just showed them segments of the articles, right? And seeing only their content and story choice, but not the name of the news publication. Now, they include visuals of the data. And in the blind survey, they asked people to self-report their own political bias. So if the people had a political bias that's left, center, lean right, or right, and then present them with content from media outlets. They showed them numerous front page headlines and the first few paragraphs from 2 articles from a given media outlet, stripping away the identifying information, and then asked respondents to rate the outlet's bias. So based on the article's headline, and then a couple paragraphs from it. It says here, a bit further down, when it goes to Epoch Times, says just under 65% of those surveys said they believe the Epoch Times content to be center. The majority said Epoch Times is centrist. Before the summer 2020 blind survey, they had rated Epoch Times as right. Seeing the result of the survey prompted an editorial review of the Epoch Times, which the All Sides team came to a general consensus that its content is lean right. So All Sides said we're lean right. Blind survey from individuals like you, right, people out there, said it was centrist. Now, while the Epoch Times writing is largely center, they determined it warrants a lean right rating because of a slight right-wing lean in story choice, as a significant percentage of stories show conservatives in a more positive light and the left in a more negative light. Fair enough, right? Get this, though, right? We'll go just a little more into this. This is how it rated other media. It said, when it came to BBC in the UK, it says BBC exhibits a slight lean left bias. New York Times, 68% of respondents say the New York Times shows a lean left or left bias. In other words, far left in this case. Bloomberg, majority sees as lean left bias. AP, majority sees as center. And so, in other words, folks, Epoch Times, less biased, centrist and less biased than BBC, New York Times, and Bloomberg. For those of you who have any friends out there who might criticize you for reading us or watching this show, you can now tell them that according to blind surveys done by third-party organizations, no ties to Epoch Times is less biased than Bloomberg, BBC, or the New York Times and is centrist. So cheers to that. The drink tonight, by the way, I'm in a hotel, but I brought my own tea. Drink tonight is just a nice Newman's black tea, something simple but nice for the ride, right? All right, folks. Let's go over a few questions, and then I want to go into what's happening in Arizona right now with the audit. So let's go into a few questions, and after the questions, I'll go over what's happening in Arizona. Actually, a lot of updates in Arizona. Basically, the people they're trying to audit are refusing to hand over the routers, right? They're refusing to hand over the routers, and they're threatening subpoenas now. The investigators are threatening subpoenas if Maricopa County officials refuse to hand them over. At the same time, it turns out they never actually, in Arizona, they never were fully in control of the election. It turns out they didn't actually have the access codes to some of the machines, meaning that they don't really know what was happening within these machines. They're trying to get those access codes. A lot going on, folks. We'll go over all this, but first let's go over some questions. All right, this is from Susan Scott. He said, "Hi, Joshua. Just wondered what year you graduated from West Hills. My son graduated in 1992, second graduating class." I moved around a lot in high school. I was class of 2003, though. You're curious. Beth Weaver. He said, "Hello, Joshua. Your mom is proud of you." My mom is great. She's out in California, actually. I hopefully visiting her next month. We'll have to see. Yeah, she's fantastic. And thank you. And yeah, for all you moms out there, happy Mother's Day as well. This is from Tucker Jones. He said, "Why are we still using YouTube?" I asked myself the same thing. We're going to be moving to Epoch TV soon. We will still have some content here, of course, but we are going to be moving to Epoch TV. And so, folks, again, we'll go a bit more into it. But again, folks, if you want to support Crossroads, you want to watch our interviews, some of the special features we're working on, please go to epochtv.com, EPOCH TV.com. It's $5 a month, $4.99, price of a latte, a little more than a gallon of gas or a little less, depending on where you're at. $4.99, you support what we're doing here. You keep this show going, and you get a lot of great content. And so, again, epochtv.com. We are going to be moving heavily there soon. YouTube is just not a good place to grow right now, being honest. And so we're hoping to move there more fully, and again, we can, not have to deal with the censorship and nonsense. And so that's the future of news as far as we see it. Future of video news, Epoch TV. This is from Sheila Marie. He said, "Yes, Joshua, what you and Dinesh spoke about, 2 GOP parties." All right, I forgot Dinesh D'Souza. I recently did an interview with him. Folks, if you haven't watched the interview with Dinesh D'Souza, check it out. We have a teaser of it up on the channel here on YouTube. The full episode is on Crossroads on Epoch TV. Check out the interview. I sat down with him in person. It was last week. We actually sat down in Texas. I'm sure you all know Dinesh D'Souza, very smart guy. We talked about the future of the Republican Party, the shakeup happening within it, and especially that it's really 2 parties right now. And yes, the MAGA party is the majority party, and the MAGA party, the Make America Great Again party, that's the one taking over. That is the one that is changing the party. That is the one that is restructuring the party. And so a great interview with Dinesh if you haven't seen it yet. And again, check out the trailer we have on YouTube. It's the latest video we have. And if you watch the full episode again, it's on Epoch TV. This is from Lisa Kiesling. You said Biden living in the White House. Last I heard, he's a bit funny. Biden's a bit funny because sure you all know. According to the media, right? According to, again, his press secretary, he's being advised to not even answer questions from the media. And this is a media that is very favorable to him. This is a media that is pretty much eating out of his hand. And so why is he giving, why are they playing along with it first off? Why are they just going along with everything he says first off? Why are they not asking hard questions? Why are they not doing the same thing they did to Trump, where they're looking at things and trying to find issues within, things? You're seeing a very 180 shift at a time, ironically, when the administration itself doesn't seem to be trusting the journalists. And keep in mind, folks, the White House pool, the people who are allowed into the White House, those are selected not by the White House, but by the mainstream media. Those are selected, again, by these news organizations. Again, Epoch Times lost its press credentials from the House Gallery. And again, it's 7 mainstream journalists who control the House Gallery. These are organizations run by the mainstream media. These are organizations that can pretty much choose who's in and who's out. They can get rid of any opposing voices, like Epoch Times, like they did with the House Gallery, for example. Any voice they have that is independent, they can get out. You might remember as well when there was a shot, actually a photograph, and Biden did do a press conference, but he had notes on the question, the pre-planned questions, the names of the journalists, who to call on, what they would be asking. it was scripted, basically, right? Or at least planned. And so when he does go up and do talks with the media, with the journalists, it's not really organic, right? It's very scripted, it's very step by step. And so the journalists are not really getting, let's say, they're not getting the ability to really dig into things. They're not given the ability to really ask the hard questions because of the way the thing is running right now, which is bizarre, actually, because the media is mostly favorable to Biden. It's actually very strange when you think about it, that they're not giving the media more access at a time when most of these mainstream outlets are very, very, very favorable towards him, to the extent that it's rare to find them criticizing anything, right? And so it does raise some questions on why they're being like that. And also, I mean, why the administration is being like that, why they're not allowing more dialogue with Biden. Again, especially when there's a lot of concerns around his health, when there's a lot of concerns around his cognitive situation right now. People are wondering about it, and so being able to have real dialogue with media right now would actually help him. It would be great for him. And so there is a big question of why they're deciding to not do that. But on your question, I assume he's living at the White House. But the way the media is right now and some of the weird videos coming out, I mean, nothing would surprise me at this point. Let's put it that way. This is from Zoe Show. He said, can we ensure 2022 election won't be rigged? So one of the big concerns right now is mostly the battleground states, because it does seem to be the case that the battleground states were where most of the anomalies took place, most of the strange coincidences and strange incidents and very shady behavior took place in the battleground states. Most of those battleground states have Republican state legislatures, and under the U.S. system, these state legislatures are the ones that basically run the elections, not the mayors, not the governors, not the federal government. In fact, even if the Democrats were to push through this H.R. 1 trying to reform voting laws in the United States, making it so it's essentially run by the federal government, not by local states, technically they would violate the Constitution by doing that. I mean, you could argue it, but technically that's unconstitutional. Again, technically, the state legislatures are the ones in charge of the elections. And folks, the state legislatures are mostly, in a lot of these states, the state legislatures are heavily conservative. And you do have a lot of states now putting into place new voter integrity programs to ensure that a lot of the, let's say, unethical practices that took place last time do not happen again. That a lot of the changes to election laws do not happen again. And again, because you had a lot of governors and mayors change election laws using emergency protocols because of the virus to allow themselves to do things that were not normally legal. For example, universal mail-in voting, while not cleaning the voting rolls, meaning that people who moved out of state, people who were dead or whatever, were still on the voting rolls, and they were giving ballots to every single person on the voting rolls. Changes that they made, for example, in New Jersey, where again, if you didn't vote by mail, you found issues if you went and tried to vote in person. A lot of things like this, right? And so you have a lot of states right now putting into place new protocols. And we'll go into some of that in just a bit. Jennifer Milliu said, Joshua, any update on leaked CCP document regarding CCP virus? I believe you're talking about the leaked document that talks about how the Chinese Communist Party, in one of their own leaked documents, was talking about weaponizing coronaviruses, specifically if there was a World War III scenario. No updates on that, but Epoch Times, we actually had a story on that, I think, last year, talking about internal Chinese military discussion on weaponizing coronaviruses in ways that actually very closely reflect what's happening now. In our article last year, specifically, we mentioned how the Chinese Communist Party was structuring a lot of its biowarfare programs around Soviet-era programs. Because the Soviets had worked on similar programs to it, the Chinese Communist Party was basically, it seemed to be the case, playing within the boundaries of those programs. We'll have to see. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is a bioweapon or something like that. But it does show the Chinese Communist Party was discussing on how to weaponize viruses like the one we have now, which does raise some serious concerns around the fact that they were doing, for example, gain-of-function research and also having Western collaboration within that research. Again, the Wuhan Institute of Virology is one of the big focuses right now where they were doing this kind of research. And again, the Wuhan Institute of Virology is the, suspect number one with possible, the lab leak possibility origin. Now, funny enough, you might remember, folks, I did this documentary last year investigating the origin of the Wuhan coronavirus. Before it was even controversial to talk about China being the possible origin of the virus, which it was. But of course, we looked into basically the different possibilities within the rumors at the time of where the virus could have come from. And so we investigated the animal origin possibility. We investigated the rumors that it came from, for example, this Huanan seafood market. We investigated the type of chimeric viruses, man-made viruses, or gain-of-function research they were doing at these laboratories. We also investigated the natural research, the natural virus research they were doing at this laboratory. And I think we presented really in-depth analysis on the possible origin I think the conclusion of it was that the most likely case is the lab leak possibility. The most likely direction all the evidence points to is a lab origin, especially given all the weird cover-ups they've had at these laboratories. And funny enough, that documentary was labeled as fake news by Facebook, and we were attacked. And then funny enough, right after that, a lot of the mainstream media, including Washington Post and others, started releasing articles basically corroborating our findings without giving us credit for it. Trying to make it look like they had exclusives on it. And so a lot of stuff coming up right now, it's just verifying, I think, what we've already proven. Verifying a lot of stuff that we've already put out there, verifying a lot of evidence that we already released. And I think what's happening now is that basically, slowly, they're coming to the same conclusion we presented in that documentary. We didn't present hard conclusions, but they're coming to realize that a lot of evidence we presented in that documentary at least deserves some serious consideration. Let's see here. This is from BD Almesked. You said the Epoch Times physical paper, it's the best. Appreciate it. Yeah, so Epoch Times in the U.S. and in some countries, we are a daily newspaper in New York, Southern California, in Washington, D.C. We also have a weekly newspaper. So, folks, if you want to get a great newspaper, print newspaper, you can also check out Epoch Times, and appreciate the support there. This is from Sean Higgins. He said, Larry Elder / Joshua Phillip 2024, Diamond's Eyes, Epoch TV is worth it. Yeah, so Larry Elder actually has another show with us too. He's also on Epoch TV. The Larry Elder Show, great show if you want to watch it as well. I know a lot of people are trying to get Larry Elder to run for president or at least run for governor of California. I know he's resistant to running for office, but people are trying to get him to run. We'll have to see. Yeah, I know a lot of people joke about us running together. It would be fun. It would be fun. This is from Carol Ann R. He said, so where am I now that I follow Epoch Times? I'm centrist. I'm on the right, but not too right. I'm somewhere over the rainbow when I watch Joshua. Appreciate it. Hey, folks, we're all centrist now, right? We can own the center. We can own the center. But a lot of people say that they didn't leave their parties. The parties just became more extreme, right? And really, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party have seen really deep cultural shifts. And so, folks, we'll do our best to give you just the clearest picture of what is happening right now. If that's a political movement, then let it be, right? All right, let's see. This is from Lauren. You said, can we I say can we cast Epoch TV? I'm not sure what you mean. You mean can you propose shows to it? Yeah, if you have something you want to send in, just contact us. Can't guarantee anything, but of course, yeah, you can send it in. This is from Roseanne Dunn. He said, Joshua Phillip, can I mail my payment for the Epoch Times TV subscription? Good question. I'm not sure. I can get back to you on that if we take mail-in payments. I'm pretty sure we do, but I can confirm that. All right, that said, folks, let's go into some more stories. I want to talk about what's happening in Arizona. Some big updates, what's happening with this audit in Arizona. A lot going on. I also want to talk about some of the voting law changes happening across the U.S. I know a lot of you are asking about voting integrity for 2022. Let's go into that in just a bit. But first, again, folks, we are totally demonetized by YouTube, but we have now created Epoch TV, EPOCH-TV.com. We'll show you a quick trailer of that now.
So by and large, we're used to submitting to medical recommendations. They give you a prescription, you take it. So the government realized with COVID, here is a kind of an amazing opportunity. People are used to doing what the doctor says. And so we can sort of go on a wartime footing, which is to say, just as in wartime, basic rights do get suspended. The suspensions are intended to be temporary, but we're doing things under COVID that were never done even a century ago under the Spanish flu epidemic and others. We have gone into unprecedented territory. I think that's been a very bad thing.
Yeah, folks. So again, you want to support Crossroads, you want to check out other channels, go to epochtv.com. And again, great interview with Dinesh D'Souza on there. We just got up today. Yeah, very smart guy. I'm sure most of you are aware of his work. Great analysis, great interview. And again, folks, go to Epoch TV. It supports this channel, helps us keep doing what we're doing. And again, we have some great content there. And actually, quick update too. I apologize about the long delay on the communism series we've been talking about. We're still filming it. We got slightly sidetracked by a couple other documentary projects, a couple other film projects. There's a lot going on right now. The launch of Epoch TV, of course. So we have some big stuff in store, folks. Some big stuff in the works. It's going to take a little bit. We're going to try to push it through as fast as we can. But again, why I'm on the road right now, we have some great productions in the works. In addition to the normal content we're doing, in addition to the live show we're doing right now. And in addition to the interviews, some really great stuff in the works. I think you're all really, really going to like it. And so stay tuned. Might be a little bit still, but I'll keep you all updated. All right, that said, let's jump into some more stories for the night. Now, again, there's an audit taking place in Arizona right now, specifically over what happened in Maricopa County during the 2020 elections. Now, Maricopa County was where you had a lot of the really bizarre anomalies take place on election night in 2020. And again, the Arizona, the situation in Maricopa County is what raised a lot of concerns around the integrity of the election. Now, locally in Arizona, they've conducted one so far. They've done one audit. But that audit was criticized of not being in-depth enough. Basically, it was criticized of individuals basically walking in, hitting the switch on the machines basically, or, turning on the machines and saying, yep, they turn on, right? Nothing, it wasn't an in-depth audit. It was a very light-handed audit and was criticized for basically not investigating anything that addresses the real concerns that voters had. And so what happened is the state Senate stepped in, and the state Senate now has pushed forward and gotten an audit from Maricopa County. They have 4 different organizations moving simultaneously doing audits of the election in Maricopa County. And there's a live video feed of it. You can watch it live. I believe we have the video on epochtimes.com, theepochtimes.com, right? They're doing a hand recount. They're doing audits of the machines. They're looking into everything they can. And there's some interesting stuff coming up from right now. Now, it's still underway. We don't have any conclusions on it yet. It's still underway, but we do have some updates on it. Let's go into what's happening. Now, this is Epoch Times reporting. It says, turn over routers or face subpoenas. Arizona lawmakers tell Maricopa County. Maricopa County is refusing to hand over the routers for the investigators doing this. It says here, legislatures in Arizona and officials in the state's largest county clashed anew this week over election audit subpoenas, with county officials refusing to hand over routers and claiming they do not have passwords to access administrative control functions of election machines. They claim they didn't even have administrative control of the election machines they were using. Who had them, right? And they're refusing to hand over the routers for the election, claiming again that it may expose sensitive information on voters. But again, it's raising concerns essentially because the people being accused of basically possible crimes, again, that's part of the reason for the audit, the people who are facing the accusations are the ones trying to prevent, in some ways, the audit from going forward. This is one of the issues you always have when it comes to allegations of voter, let's say, irregularities, right? One of the issues you always have with things like this is that the people who are accused of this are the ones who control the system. And now you have the higher level of the state government, the state Senate, stepping in and forcing the local officials to basically allow an investigation of themselves. And a lot of the local officials there are pushing back against that. They're trying to prevent a lot of these investigations from happening. We'll go into what's happening there, going into the reasonings they're giving for it. Let's go into it. Now, it says here, Arizona's Senate told Maricopa County on Friday that it would issue subpoenas for live testimony when the county's board of supervisors, with the county board of supervisors, unless it received materials that are being withheld. In other words, if the local officials there continue to refuse to grant them the materials that they need to conduct this investigation, they're going to make the board of supervisors go and testify. They're going to subpoena them. And they said this is a lawyer for the state Senate. They said, we've been asking to relay that the Senate views the county's explanation on the router and password issues as inadequate and potentially incorrect. So they're saying that the arguments they're giving for not granting this information and not granting this access is inadequate and potentially incorrect. It says here, the Arizona Senate subpoenaed a slew of election materials, such as ballots following the 2020 election. Lawmakers also issued subpoenas for election machines, passwords, and other technology. Maricopa County alleged in a lawsuit that the request for materials was overly broad and threatened voter privacy. Now, a judge, though, ruled that they were equivalent of a court order, meaning that very likely they can't block it. They're equivalent of a court order. But the county said this week, Maricopa County, said this week it is not going to turn over routers or router images, claiming that doing so poses a significant security risk to law enforcement. After the court already ordered this stuff, saying it's equivalent to a court order, Maricopa County is now refusing to provide it, saying it's a threat to law enforcement. So now they're not saying it's a threat to voters because they already tried that. Now they're saying it's a threat to law enforcement. Now let's go into a bit more. The county has also informed the Senate's audit liaison, former Republican Secretary of State Kent Bennett, that it does not have, it does not have passwords to access administrative functions on these voting machines. They don't have the administrative passwords on the machines they used for the election. How did they not have administrative access to the machines that they were using? And again, if we're being told these machines are infallible, more secure than Windows, right? Which has huge teams working on cybersecurity, no possibility of any issues whatsoever. How is it that the officials there didn't even have administrator access to it, right? Maybe something we don't know when it comes to this. Go into it. They said that and these are the machines they were using to scan ballots during the election. And this is a quote here. It says, they've told us they don't have that second password, or that they've given us all the passwords they have. They've also told us that they now can't, as they promised a couple weeks ago, provide our subcontractors with the virtual access to the routers and hubs and other things of the Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center, as was part of these subpoenas. In other words, folks, this was part of these subpoenas. This was part of the subpoenas, and they're refusing to hand it over. And yeah, just real quick, yeah, chosen and faithful. Now, folks, how many of you, log into your computer every day and maybe once a week and see that there's a security update, right? How many of you log in and see there's security updates? How many of you log onto your phone and occasionally see an update? Now, that is usually because even having these huge companies, you're going to have security holes still, and those security holes need to be patched. Now, should we take it as word of mouth that these machines are infallible, no possibility of having security holes, doesn't exist? That's unheard of in technology. That's unheard of. But that's what they're claiming, essentially, with some of this. Let's go into a bit more, right? Now, they're basically refusing to hand over this information that was actually supposed to be handed over through the subpoenas. They're refusing to go along with the subpoenas, saying that it's a threat to the privacy of the law enforcement officers. That's what they're claiming now. Now, go into it a bit more. Now, Bennett had told that to One American News. And again, John Brakey, a Democrat who is serving as an assistant to Bennett, told the broadcaster, OANN, that he was, quote, blown away by the password development. So this is a Democrat saying this, saying he was blown away by the fact that these individuals claimed that they didn't actually have the passwords for these machines they were using. He said this, right? He said, it's like leasing a car and they refuse to give you the keys, right? He's saying it's like leasing a car and they refuse to give you the keys, that you're using machines, but you don't actually have the passwords for the machines that you're using to determine the future president of the United States, right? And he continued saying this, quote, they're supposed to be running the election. You know what's wrong? Sometimes these vendors have too much power and we're voting on secret software. And that's why this recount down here is very important. So folks, again, Maricopa County is refusing to hand over some of the information required in the audit, claiming that it's a threat to voters or a threat to law enforcement if they do. They're also saying that they do not have access to the machines, they don't have the passwords, and so they're not able to hand that over. We'll have to see if the companies running those machines hand the passwords over. This is where things are at on that side of the audit taking place. And a bit more happening with this as well. Another story here. It says Arizona Senate tells U.S. officials plan to canvass voters is on hold. All right. The plan to canvass voters right now is on hold. Let's go into this. It says here, Arizona's Senate president on Friday told the U.S. Department of Justice that a plan by election auditors to verify the validity of certain voters is on hold indefinitely. In other words, on hold and may not move forward. On hold for good unless something changes. And they said this. There's a quote here from the Arizona Senate President Karen Fann, a Republican. She said this. She said, if and to the extent the Senate subsequently decides that canvassing is necessary to the successful completion of the audit, its vendor will implement detailed requirements to ensure that the canvassing is conducted in a manner that complies fully with the commands of the United States Constitution and federal and state civil rights laws. In other words, if they do decide to do it, if they do decide to canvass voters to verify that the information lines up, right, if it does happen, they say they're going to do it in a way that aligns with state civil rights laws. Now, Carlin, a principal deputy assistant attorney general with the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. Remember, folks, the Department of Justice had sent a letter to the to the Arizona officials about the audit. And normally, folks, again, the federal government is not supposed to intervene in local elections. The elections are in charge of the local government, not the federal government. And so the DOJ intervening in the election is being seen by some as the federal government interfering with local officials making sure that the election process was fine, when the election process is, again, something under the control of the local government. But the Department of Justice, the way that they're doing it is they did it through the Civil Rights Division. They're trying to make it a civil rights issue. And they raised concerns in an open letter, right? And this week with the plan by Cyber Ninjas, the company leading the audit for the state Senate, to verify the validity of certain voter registration with questionable addresses by dispatching people to verify whether the voter lived at the address on the resignation or on the registrations. They said that such an effort could constitute voter intimidation. The federal government is telling the local government, which is in charge of the elections, that if they go and canvass and make sure that the people who voted are actually who they claim they are. And remember, folks, that there was information coming out showing that some of the people who voted were voting from P.O. boxes or things like that. And then even independent investigations showed that many people said in their own words and was recorded. We had this in the documentary we did during the elections. And it was recorded saying that, no such person lived here. No, the person is basically disabled and so on. They're saying that that would be voter intimidation. That if an investigation was done on that, they're saying it would be voter intimidation. And so they've put that part of this on hold. They put the canvassing of voters on hold. Now, it's unclear whether they did that because, right? It's unclear whether they did this because of the Department of Justice letter, but at the very least, that was one of the concerns the Department of Justice raised on this. Now, folks, we'll be covering this as it unfolds. We'll be letting you know what happens with it. I mean, there's a lot going on right now with this. And again, one of the big gates right now is the local officials trying to get these passwords for the voting machines. And the voting machine companies will have to see if they actually give that access. If they refuse to give that access, it means that the Maricopa County audit is going to possibly go after the officials at the voting machine companies. And we'll have to see to what extent they can get them to, say, testify, to step forward, and so on. And it'll raise some questions, I think, on the transparency of what's happening. I think some very big things happening with this. I'll keep you all updated as information comes out, as things unfold. But currently, this is where things are at with this. Now, on that note, a few other things are happening right now with election integrity. Few updates, we'll go into it, because what you're seeing right now is that different states are putting into place stronger election integrity laws. They are making their election integrity much, much better. And going into 2022, this is going to be very significant. This is going to be, again, what ensures public trust within the election system, at least on the conservative side. A lot of the Democrats, of course, they're saying that this is voter intimidation. They're saying this is eliminating voter access. But the Republicans are saying requiring people to prove that they are who they say they are, not with voter ID, but showing a driver's license or pretty much any kind of official ID, is not racist, because, who doesn't have a credit card? Who doesn't have to show ID if you try to fly in an airline? Who doesn't have to show ID if you want to go, watch a football game or something like that? And it's these individuals, even some of the same companies, criticizing them of voter intimidation by asking people to prove that they are who they say they are, using very light requirements on it, right? Now, let's go to what's happening right now. Now, first of all, Arizona, because that's one of the big focuses right now. Arizona formally bans post-election signature fix for unsigned mail-in ballots. Epoch Times reports, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey signed a law on Friday banning voters from adding signatures on unsigned mail-in ballots after Election Day. Normally would be a thing, but it has to happen now that they have to ban this, right? The measure, Arizona Senate Bill 1003, SB 1003, was approved earlier in the state legislature in party line votes. In other words, Republicans voted for it, Democrats voted against it, for the most part. Now, the new law codified a ruling by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit on October 6, 2020, within 1 month of the 2020 elections, It also ended disputes over unsigned mail-in ballots between the state Republicans and Democrats. Current Arizona law allows election officials to contact the voters to fix the signatures on the ballots if the signatures don't match other signatures from records in the Department of Motor Vehicle voter registration forms or previous early ballots. The voters can fix the signatures if they fail to pass the verification process within up to 5 business days after Election Day. And the new law did not change anything about the grace period for the signed ballots. However, it ended the state Democrats' effort to add a similar grace period to unsigned ballots if the ballots were not signed at all. Made it so that cannot happen. And it's getting late, folks. Let me go over real quick what else is happening. In Texas, the House passed a GOP-backed election integrity bill. It says here the Texas State House on Friday passed a GOP-backed election overhaul bill that would add new penalties and rules, becoming the latest state Republican-led legislative body to pass similar legislation in recent days. The House passed Senate Bill 7 on a 78-64 mostly party line vote. The bill, which was first passed in the Senate but was significantly reworked in the House, will now head back to the Texas State Senate for a vote. And folks, again, this is significant because you're seeing a lot of states do this. We saw it, for example, in Georgia. We saw it in Florida. We've seen the pushback even from the Biden administration, even from big businesses, when states have, in fact, put in stronger election integrity laws, things to ensure that loopholes are closed, things to ensure that, again, you have to show ID, things to ensure that, people can't add signatures to unsigned ballots after Election Day, things like this, right? A lot of things happening right now with this. The biggest thing with this, though, in my analysis, is that this is the pattern right now we're watching in this country, is that, again, local states are putting through legislation, and then other states, after seeing that legislation, are seeing what works, how it was done, how it was passed, and then taking that legislation and reworking it a little bit to fit the needs of their own state. And so this is something that is spreading. As Texas gets on this, as Arizona gets on this, as Florida gets on this, other states are stepping forward as well. And folks, again, 2022 is not far away. This is the trajectory. This is where things are heading with this. And we'll have to watch how it unfolds. And folks, again, I'll be keeping you updated on it. And that said, folks, it's getting late, so I'll call it a night. Again, I'm on the road again. I'm in Texas right now, actually. I'll be doing these live Q&As every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So again, folks, I'll see you again this coming Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, folks, if you want to support Crossroads, you want to support the work we do, please consider subscribing to epochtv.com, EPOCHTV.com. If you want to go the extra mile, also please tell a friend or family member about Crossroads on epochtv.com. And folks, that said, as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.
Here's the Hollywood viewpoint. America is bad, capitalism is evil, except for my 3-picture deal with Warner Brothers, except for my house in Malibu, except for my Mercedes-Benz. That's all good. That's all really good. But America is an evil, oppressive place. The backstory here, as filmmakers like to say, is the Communist Party USA involvement in the studios. You never see communists committing mass atrocities like you see in movies about the Nazis. You never see it. But you see American planes bombing, dropping bombs. So the implication is that the United States is the bad guy. That's the agenda. America is the villain.